With Super Tuesday now behind us and all signs pointing to former President Donald Trump as the likely Republican nominee for president, evangelical voters will be essential to his return to the White House. Now, they're a key vote for Republican candidates. Last time, they were a large portion of President Trump's vote. In fact, in 2020, the Sage Cons, that's the core, were over a third of his vote. Now, this reality can only mean that the left will ramp up their voter suppression efforts. How do they do that? Well, one of them is by labeling Christians who are involved in the political process as Christian nationalists. We saw this recently with the Politico smear against Christians, both online and through appearances on cable news channels. So the legacy media has shown that any conservative Christian involved in the political process will be labeled as a Christian nationalist. Join me now to discuss this and much more, Dr. Albert Mohler. He is the president of the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. He's the author of many books, including Tell Me the Stories of Jesus, the Explosive Power of Jesus' Parable. Dr. Mohler, welcome back to Washington Watch. Great to see you.
Thank you, Tony. It's always good to be with you. And wow, what an historic day. Lots to talk about.
There is a lot to talk about. And I want to start, you've already, on your daily briefing, you've talked about this, and it's a couple weeks old, so I want to refresh this for the benefit of I've been wanting to get you on, but you've been traveling. So I want to, for the benefit of our viewers and listeners, I want to play this clip of Heidi Przybyla, who works for Politico, but was on MSNBC and made this comment. Play the clip, please.
The thing that unites them as Christian nationalists, not Christians, by the way, because Christian nationalist is very different, is that they believe that our rights as Americans, as all human beings, don't come from any earthly authority. They don't come from Congress. They don't come from the Supreme Court. They come from God. The problem with that is that they are determining men, it is men, are determining what God is telling them.
Dr. Mohler, your response.
Well, you know, first of all, there's just such stupidity in that, to be honest. There's just no other word for it. As if all of a sudden she's discovered that Christians believe that human dignity and human rights come from the Creator, which, by the way, is exactly what says, as you so well know, in the Declaration of Independence. You know, the entire American system is built upon respect for rights, not the invasion of rights.
I had no idea that Thomas Jefferson was a Christian nationalist.
Well, Thomas Jefferson is even more surprised than you are. Yeah, in the sense that this is being thrown out as a radical idea, and you know, it is a really important thing, Tony, as you know, historically, because as you look at the American Revolution, it was a revolution of sorts based upon continuity of a belief in human dignity coming from a divine creator and human rights, that we're endowed with rights by the Creator, as contrasted with what came later in the French Revolution, which was a very secular revolution, in which you had a declaration of the rights of man as if they all of a sudden exist. So the left has gone in the French direction. And, you know, I think Przybyla's statement just makes very clear they've been in France so long, they don't even understand that the French revolutionaries were rebelling against the very claim that rights come from God.
So you are sitting in an institution of higher learning. You're at a seminary.
Yes.
Is this the outcome of the left's long march through the institutions? That she was honestly stating this. This was not like a spin, but she was stating what she thought to be truth.
Yeah, that's the amazing thing. She was speaking about something that she thought was spellbindingly obvious, that this is a scary group she called Christian nationalists, who actually believe that rights are derived from the Creator, from God, rather than from government. Which, by the way, in contrast, and I know we'll get to this, the scary thing is they actually think that Congress or the White House can give rights. So that's where rights come from. That's one of the most dangerous ideas I could.
But isn't that what they have created? Isn't that why we have the controversy of abortion? It was a right that was created.
Yes, no, absolutely. And you know what just happened in France this week with France putting abortion in their constitution? It's an acknowledgement of the fact that they're just inventing and constructing rights. Because, you know, when you put abortion in the Constitution, and France is very proud, you know, that they're the first nation to do this, you're saying that abortion constitutes the nation. That's an astounding claim that, frankly, It wouldn't even have been recognizable in France 20 years ago.
But what you're doing there with this, what we would call positive law, man-made law, positive law, is that you're elbowing out natural law or the moral law of God to make room for this law created by man. And then when you have a course correction like we had in Dobbs, it creates all types of controversy and people don't know how to handle it.
Right. And, part of what strikes me, and you mentioned the long march through the institutions, that particular article, the statement made by Priscilla there, you look at that, you recognize that's exactly what the leftist academy has been teaching. And thus, this is what's being regurgitated now, as if it makes sense. And, what gets me, and look, we can be very smug and self-satisfied ourselves, just given sin, if we're not careful. But she just was so as if she discovered how to split the atom. She's just saying, look, I just discovered this. These are very weird people. They believe that rights come from God.
But there's a bigger play here, and she's just an actor on the stage. The bigger play here from the left is to suppress the vote and the engagement of evangelicals, because that's such a scary word, Christian nationalism.
Or to subvert us.
Yeah. So it's to try to keep us from engaging in the process, from being openly speaking about how, well, yes, I do believe God has given me the rights that I have, and government is to protect it. So many people are intimidated by that.
Yeah, this whole conversation in which she's talking about Christian, it's not just Christian, it's Christian nationalists. I'll just say I'm old enough to have gone through the entire vocabulary of the modern conservative movement in terms of the dismissals of the left. It would have been the radical right, the Christian right, the new Christian right, the radical Christian right. You just gotta. So every few years, and she's young enough, and you see a lot of these people are so young. They actually believe this is a new thing.
I know.
The same criticisms were made against evangelicals in the age of Ronald Reagan.
So Al, it makes us all feel like we're getting old, because I remember when Jerry Falwell and the moral majority in every election cycle, either they were scary and they were going to dominate the world, or they had no power and they were dying out. That was the narrative.
And so you're exactly right. The contradiction is they say we're a dying breed, and there's more of them every day.
I know, it's crazy. All right, so the last question on this, because I want to move to another topic. How should Christians deal with this? I mean, this effort to intimidate, to suppress, to redirect our cultural engagement as believers, as salt and light.
Yeah. Tony, what a great question. I think we take ideas seriously. That's marked American conservatism as a modern movement. We take ideas seriously. So we're willing to talk about every single one of these arguments, what it means to be Christian, what it means to understand the nation, what might be rightly identified as nationalism. But we do this while telling Christians, look, this just reminds us of what's at stake. We've got not only to vote, we got to be actively involved. This is an intentional effort to try to keep us out of the public square, or to dismiss us, or frankly, to make conservative Christians embarrassed about being conservative Christians. And that's what we know we cannot accept.
I want to move now to another topic, and it's kind of why I don't think the left will ultimately be successful with everything they're pushing, just as the French Revolution failed, when they have to face reality. And now we have, I played a clip earlier, and I'll play that clip we played earlier of Governor Hochul of New York.
So today, in the wake of these latest attacks, I'm unveiling a 5-point plan to rid our subways of people who commit crimes and protect all New Yorkers. Point 1, I'm redeploying nearly 1,000 members of the New York State Police, MTA Police, and MTA National Guard.
So what happened to that defund the police movement?
Well, there's a basic Christian and conservative principle, well, Tony, and that is that order does not always precede to liberty, but liberty always requires order. And so one of the central beliefs of the conservative movement, and I think this is so deeply biblical, is that order must precede liberty. So you look at the people in New York, frankly, I just came from California, the same thing going on there. Liberal jurisdictions where, frankly, crime is recognized for exactly what it is. And the people who called out and said, eliminate the police a matter of a couple years ago, they're now saying we want a policeman on every corner. We need the police. And so you have liberal politicians trying to catch up. You got all these progressive, supposedly, district attorneys, some of which have been kicked out of office, and the others are frankly turning less progressive by the day, because otherwise they're going to lose their jobs, because denying crime as a problem is a very losing strategy. And in particular, when you take your life in your hands to go on the subway.
Right. But here's the problem the challenge we've got to stay focused on here, because this could lead to totalitarianism, because unless you have, as you talked about, the order precedes liberty,
right.
you have to have self-government. And we're doing everything we can to undermine the idea of self-government, the family, the church. Those are the institutions that help instill that self-government.
That's right. That's why, again, the Christian and conservative understanding is it must be natural order. It must be the right order. And that, by the way, is an order that honors human dignity. And then again, in a secular society, they have no idea what the rightful order is. That's a part of the problem. They can't name sin, so crime is just a sociological problem. They can't name the creator, so rights are government invented. And so everything is just a matter of interest groups. And you know what? The final interest group that matters, and Governor Hochul's statement just makes that clear, are the voters. If politicians won't hear anyone else, guess what? They eventually have to hear the voters. And people in New York don't want to be mugged. They don't want to be hurt on the subways. They are crying out. Same thing I've seen in Minneapolis was just in the San Francisco Bay Area, Los Angeles. As you know, some of these so-called progressive district attorneys that didn't want to prosecute crime, they're facing a very difficult time holding on to office. Reality hurts.
It also speaks to Christians that the truth, while it may be out of style for a season, it kind of rotates back in, because people move, they gravitate toward the natural law. They may not be able to articulate it, but they know that there's got to be balance.
One of the longest running series on history is the Dick Wolf series, Law and Order, and it's had several derivatives. That's a very important thing from a worldview perspective. There are all kinds of political debates, but at the end of the day, shows like that are popular precisely because there's a deep hunger in us for law and order. And so, when you have politicians that get outside that, eventually they're going to have to answer for it. And I think it points to a very deep conviction among Christians, and that is that the rightful arrangement of law and order is necessary in order for us to exercise the liberties that are ours. I think it's a great time for conservatives to make an argument.
Yeah. I would add to that series, another long-running series on law and order was Andy Griffith. That taught those same core principles, but incorporated even more when it came to where do those come from? They come from the values that we have to. It begins in our home and in our relationships. And
Absolutely.
I think you're absolutely right, Dr. Mohler. This is a time for Christians to have conversations with friends, with coworkers, with neighbors. We have the truth. We shouldn't shrink back and be intimidated by the labels of the left.
Absolutely. And, we're, again, the people who are willing to talk about anything. In other words, we're willing to consider arguments. But the long political arguments in human history are those that recognize the importance of law, the necessity of restraint, the value and the fragility of liberty. And, it's one thing for the left to keep talking about, wanting liberty for this and liberty for that. But as Governor Hochul's statement makes clear, if you don't have the liberty just to go from one end of New York to the other without believing your life is in danger, all those artificial liberties they're claiming, they don't appear so important anymore.
Absolutely, but we've got to connect the dots for people to see them, let them see the progress or the process and how it plays out. Dr. Al Mohler, always great to talk with you. Thanks so much for taking time to join us today.
Always enjoy it, Tony. Stay in the battle.